That Marcus Potter
No,
guy.
don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Don't do that. I know he loves Marcus.
I love Marcus with all of my heart. He's an absolutely beautiful, wonderful human being.
And a great director.
And a great director, yeah.
But it's separate.
They are separate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys worked with Marcus before? He's new just this year, isn't he?
Yeah, he's new this year.
Yeah.
This is his second show he's directed at KU.
He did the summer Chasing Gods.
He did Chasing
Yeah.
Gods.
I'm kicking myself. I've been reading more and more press about it, and then it's going to open a New York repertory. And one of my questions whether or not any of the KU kids, if they'll go out to the New York show.
I know at least Gabrielle Smith
Gabriella Smith.
really loves New York, so I can see her trying to do that.
Yeah,
but
she's a New York rep partner. Right?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm not sure.
We'll see if
specifically.
Marcus asks anybody else too.
I mean, Marcus loves Gabby too. So
Yeah. They're real close. Chasing Gods was super cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it looked cool. And I missed the last two of the year that I was kicking myself, and I think maybe I know you were in it, but you might have been in it.
We were in Sycorax together. Yeah. We were very different characters
tell
then.
me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we played two sailors that it was a prequel to The Tempest, and Sycorax, the witch that's mentioned in The Tempest, she was held captive on our boat.
Well, because we were escorting her
yeah.
out of the, essentially, she had been blamed for creating the tempest that destroyed the town.
Yeah.
And upon doing so, the town hired a bunch of sailors, where we come in, and we escort her to an island where she is then banished.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a modern representation of pre-Tempest written by Susan Gale Todd.
It's for getting there.
Yeah.
And our characters so different from the characters that we have.
We were
now.
very slimy sailors.
Oh.
Like, it's definitely sailor, but it feels more like pirate just because we're so slimy.
Oh yeah, no, we had to paint our teeth yellow.
Yeah, yellow and
it's
very
gross.
crude and graphic lines.
Yeah,
I had to say.
You had an entire monologue about a dick joke, so.
Yeah, it was. It was some guy lost his privates and it was in a nest up in a tree or something.
Yeah.
And I had this whole monologue about it, and I watched everyone's.
Well, I had to react to that too,
yeah.
which is just you're saying this monologue for 3 minutes, and I'm on the back just because my character was I believed every word he said, just ate it up. So and to go from that to we're both very distinguished characters in the Christians. We both have our complete identity, where there's honestly a genuine sense of connection.
Yeah, for sure. It's I'm almost like a father figure because you kind of found your calling in the church as you were growing up because you didn't have much else.
Yeah.
And but I think definitely that camaraderie that we had in Sycorax helps us have a connection more on stage, which is important because we don't agree. In Sycorax he kind of followed me, but here we have a very different story.
Oh yeah, it's
for sure
different.
Yeah. I'm stuck on Sycorax.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a good show.
For me, I was going to go to the show, and so I was gearing up, and I rewatched The Tempest with Dame Judi Dench, I think, and then Russell Brand.
Yeah.
And then for your guys' characters that you're describing, I'm thinking of the Russell Brand and his. I can't remember the other actor that he was, but they were a duo in there. That they were kind of this piratey kind of.
Was he what was he? Do you know what was his part? I don't know if I saw it.
Russell Brand and this other guy. They were just two drunken sailors that were there working with. They had been crashed by the Tempest.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the Tempest washes
now.
everybody on the shore.
I get what you're talking about.
This is they're part of that group of the 6 surviving sailors that include the man that banished the witch or something, and
we never explicitly talked about where our sailors would go after dropping Sycorax off on the island. we more or less focused on the before and the during.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could very much see the connection to the Russell Brand esque pirate sailors like thing.
Yeah.
I mean, my character was drunk 80% of the time that he was on stage.
Yeah.
It sounds just like these two
Yeah.
characters,
That's-
where like the wine gave him super strength, kind of
Yeah.
survive.
We learned one of our funniest like how to get drunk.
Yeah. That acting drunk will stay with us forever.
Yeah.
But it was just like someone just told us that when you're drunk, you're like, I'm not drunk, you're drunk. And that just clicked for us. Like ever since our director, Jane Barnett, told us that, who's actually our dramaturge for Christians. She told us that, or Chelsea Pace, who worked with us.
Chelsea Pitts, I think. Or was it Pace or Pitts?
I don't know. She's a theater
Chelsea.
intimacy director, and she came in and helped work with us. And either her or Jane,
They
conveyed
told
that
us
to
like
us, and it just clicked.
Yeah, to act drunk, say that you're not drunk, and then to the person that you're directing your conversation with, tell them that they're drunk.
Yeah.
And then it'll compound upon itself until eventually it's just like a big old mess of like, I'm not drunk. You're drunk.
What are you talking about?
Stop it.
It is
Until eventually it gets ridiculous and
yeah.
English becomes difficult.
Yeah.
As you do when you're drunk.
Yeah.
Like I would now.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, the Christians. Tell me about your characters in the Christians. You're lead, and you're his assistant. So tell me about that.
So I am the head pastor of a megachurch that I have been a part of. This I've been the head pastor of this church since its small beginnings, and I've helped it grow, and I've watched it grow, and in this in the beginning of this show, I deliver a sermon detailing how I've had this epiphany. I went to a conference. I won't get into it, but I radically change how the congregation believes in God and faith. We no longer are a church that believes in hell, and that makes everyone not understand what's happening, and it causes a bunch of problems. And the show is all about the aftermath and the retaliation from that.
Yeah. So where my character comes in. Well, Pastor Paul has run this mega church for a long time, and I probably came in around the 200 person mark. Is where I think. So I've been with them for a while. I've had a bit of a troubled past. So you can think of it as I got kicked out of my parents' house. I won't go into what, because that's for me to know. And found myself in the church asking for help. In which case they started offering my character, because of my hard work and diligence, they started offering me a position, and I helped revitalize youth ministries. And then I eventually became associate pastor. My character is a bit more inflamed. He gets a little inflamed. He does speak out, but it's also like a little bit of a show.
Yeah, we talked a lot about how. Because he is the first person to question my teachings after I perform or go through this sermon, and we've talked a lot about how I think these guys really they have that kind of relationship. Like, it's a father and son thing, but he also is like he points things out so we both can learn, and as a congregation we can learn.
Yeah, it's almost as if like there's this dichotomy, is that the right word, between your character and my character, and it's two battling philosophies on the existence of hell.
Yeah.
Because that's the big question, is does hell exist? And then all of the follow-up questions after that, and some of us are on the side that like hell does exist, and others are like, well, maybe we're just living in hell, or hell doesn't exist. So what happens when you introduce that idea into a giant megachurch in an instant, pretty much, or just a sermon?
It's ironically enough the day that we just moved into we've moved into our new facility, our new church, a big, enormous building, as I say later on, and it's the day that the debt is paid for it.
Looks a little fishy.
It looks a little fishy, and people definitely point that out to me, and I have to figure out how to respond to that.
Yeah.
I think in a larger sense, it becomes a story of what God is saying to you, or what you are thinking God is saying to you, and where does that line draw, and what God is saying, how is it different between people, and that struggle that people have in faith.
We've definitely been like, it's the other one of the things is because our characters are so like ideologically different, what makes us the same too is like where can we find the similarities so that we have that genuine sense of connection. And long story short is both of us just want to save people, but we don't have any. We have different methods of doing so.
Yeah.
And that's backed up by backstory and all that fun stuff. So.
How we were raised and whatnot.
So Noah, how did you find your character here? What kind of research did you do? Have you visited some mega churches?
We, as a group, not all of our cast, but most of it, we went to the Church of Resurrection, the big Methodist church in Olathe, and that is definitely an inspiration. However, their church is a little larger even than what we are in this play. But I did draw inspiration from Pastor Adam there. He's the head pastor there, a very passionate and soft-spoken guy who tries to really push the message in a way that it's not about him. And he never wants it to be about him. And he wants to save people. He wants to help the world. And that's, I think, the pushing force for Paul. And he really, I really want to save people. I want the world to be better. And he does it out of love. And he's a loving person. He's in his head sometimes, and he sticks in the scripture a lot. But he thinks, I believe that no matter what I need to do, I can do it as long as I can explain it to people. Because he knows that in the end result, the world will be a better place after all of that.
What about you, Karen?
Well, when thinking about my character, Joshua, when you first read it, my initial instinct was to read as almost a deliberate villain or antagonist, because it's so easy to see the good in your character, and it's so easy to see the bad in mine. So initially he was spiteful, lashed out, definitely aggressive. But Marcus and I have been working on changing aspects of that. Because if my character is so connected with youth ministries and the people of the church that it causes the church to schism when I leave or if I leave, then how do I showcase that charisma? So I took a lot of inspiration from modern conservative preachers, and in doing so, I learned to showcase the funny side of Christianity, of faith. My character has his serious moments, but he's also aloof enough to understand when things are and are not going his way.
Just to clarify, you mean like the humor in sermons and stuff that people use in faith. Like he's not meaning like there's no backhand way that you're saying that.
No, this is just
It's not the Book of Mormon.
No.
Well, because one of the best ways to, I guess, showcase, faith is you got to have like a light and a dark side. So after you say something like pretty heavy, you then have to be able to laugh at it afterwards. And so finding that for my character and then pushing that idea has been really, really fun and interesting.
I think that's the interesting part of the show, that it really talks about Christianity as a realistic thing, and it speaks to how it actually is in life. It doesn't downvote it or change it at all. It's real, and that's why it's moving.
The script is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's almost poetry. Just from the beginning sermon, you can tell almost immediately that Paul really cares about this message, but also he cares about performing a sermon. Like, he really loves this. This is his element, and I think that will shown through.
So mega churches in general are kind of getting a little more play in the press. What is it, John Goodman and
Joel Osteen.
Yeah, they're getting ready to do. Have you looked at any of these other shows and kind of to see what you're doing compared to what's happening in other culture?
Yeah, I've looked a fair amount at other mega churches, and we actually, as a group, looked at
the
Carlton Pearson.
Oh yeah, Carlton
and all
Pearson.
that
Yeah,
stuff.
which is very alludes heavily to what happens in our show.
Mm-hmm. And it's really intriguing to see what different mega churches offer. Because from an outsider perspective, I'm, as Kieran Regan, I am not Christian. So I had thought all mega churches were the same. But there are different kinds of preachers, different kinds of pastors who preach different kinds of messages, and in doing so attract hundreds of thousands of followers. Yeah. And it's very easy to fall down the rabbit hole that preachers are there to take your money.
Which is not
it's
true.
Not entirely true.
No. I mean, in every profession, there's the bad apple, the bad bunch, but it's just that. It's rare.
Yeah, it's rare. And then you do look at someone like Joel Osteen. And like my first introduction to Joel Osteen was a guy dressing up as Joel Osteen and getting let into his church as Joel Osteen. So people were like, "We love you." And to see that individual worshipped as almost like and I use the term worshipped because people adore these individuals. They put them up on pedestals. And when we were at the Church of Resurrection,
it was a series on the different. I was going to say
idolizing.
Idolizing and different commandments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there a considerable amount of showmanship at the service that you went to? I saw photos of like a full orchestra, but I mean,
the orchestra seemed there was some showmanship, but it was all like it was formal. It wasn't a concert or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It was very professional. Adam, the pastor, he was very adamantly not wanting that because he even said he's like, I do not want to be the reason that you're here.
Yeah.
Which I think reflects Paul a lot through that.
Yeah.
But we're also, I mean, they're a branch of Methodist, and our megachurch is non-denominational. So every megachurch we looked at, seeing what kind of parts we draw from, which parts we don't, because it's kind of up in the air with more of a
Non-denominational.
I can't say it, but that's what I meant.
Yeah. So it's interesting to also find the little different intricacies within each megachurch as well. You know, each one that we look at is different from the last.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of megachurches are defined by their pastor.
Yeah. Because in a lot of cases, that's the reason they grew to the level they are.
Yeah, as an individual with extreme charisma.
Yeah, or something there at least.
There's something
But,
there,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Couldn't just be Jesus.
Well,
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I think both.
it's probably a mixture of both.
I guess I was assuming that Jesus is in all things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I look at it as a lot like just like theater, but that collective experience, you know, that shared emotional state. It's something I'll probably look into more as I investigate megachurches more. But just that surreal high of that camaraderie. I
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
as a teenager going to Acquire the Fire, giant megachurch events. And just the sheer emotion of being amongst all of those people sharing that single idea. And theater's similar to that, I
yeah,
think.
exactly.
Especially when it's just a really good show, or a really
Yeah.
powerful show.
And hopefully we get there.
Or absolutely. or even a tough show where the audience kind of has to is struggling right alongside the actors as things go wrong, you know, throughout the show, and we all have to adapt.
There's definitely this sense of community.
Yeah.
I mean, when we went to, we're going to keep referencing Resurrection because it was
Big inspiration.
big inspiration
Yeah.
for us. It was really eye-opening into seeing the world that these people live. And I mean, you're sitting in a coliseum filled with
Yeah, it almost feels that
2,000,
way.
3,000
a
other
giant
people.
stained glass window with very small detail of each person and everything.
And you cannot help, even if you are an outsider, you cannot help but feel at least a little sense of welcome. I mean, I walked in and 3 people wanted to shake my hand. I don't know them. And that definitely translates over into what we're doing with the Christians, is we do want to showcase that there is this sense of community. And doing that through the words that we are saying, the arguments that we have. And I mean, community is also referenced multiple times throughout the show. So that camaraderie is definitely, it correlates with both religion and theater.
But they'll definitely have moments where it's like how you said, the audience will have to watch someone struggle, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about hell. What did you believe going in to the Christians, and maybe what have you learned since?
I unlike Kieran, I am a Christian. I am one of those Christians that believe that love conquers all. Like, I think that there is a hell, but I don't think there's just yes or no. Like you're in heaven or not. I think that some people, some bad people, but I think he's compassionate. If you try to do good, he sees that and knows that. I think through this show, I've maybe tightened that grip on that viewpoint more, but also loosened up, because I know that through that you have to be accepting of other people and understand where they come from. But at the same time, I don't think I could ever believe there is no hell, but because it seems absolutist, but for sure Paul got me close. He's got good points for sure.
Yeah, I know for me, I'm from a part of Southern California. My mom didn't take us to any Christian churches. I'm actually Unitarian Universalist, which, long story short, is we just, our main ideas are to be accepting, to love one another, and to have balance, equality. And one of the things that we never really talked about was the core beliefs of other religions, because we just preach about being good people. And coming into the Christians with that mindset, and now I'm taking away from it as a character, that an individual that has to commit and believe to the idea of hell. We did an exercise where Potter, he had to sit on the floor, and we meditated and imagined, what would our happiest moment be? And then...
Like a dream sequence.
Like a dream sequence.
In a way.
And then the exact opposite. What would our, I guess, most...
Like our nightmare.
Our nightmare. Yeah, nightmare. What would our nightmare be? And
as Associate Pastor Joshua.
As Associate Pastor Joshua, it hammered into me the belief that hell, isn't just cartoon devils with pitchforks and all that stuff. It felt real, whether it's in my imagination or whatever we're feeling. But, it's a terrifying place.
Yeah.
And to be sent there is almost eternal doom, from my character's perspective. Me as Kieran, I've definitely gained a new viewpoint of why hell can be so scary.
Yeah.
And it sort of made me think about, what is the difference between, operating out of good faith and operating out of fear? And where do we as individuals and characters and people who play characters, where do we fall within that? And, that correlates directly to hell. Yeah. Or the idea of hell, Do you do good because you're a person, or do you do good because you believe that doing good is fundamental quality of a good human being? Or do you do good because you don't want to go to hell and you don't want to be sent to that eternal torment?
Yeah. And even if Noah and Kieran haven't experienced those things, Joshua and as myself as Paul, their reasoning, I think, hits home. From once you understand where these characters come from and why they are so hard in their beliefs, it's made all the more real, for sure. Because it isn't just a silly reason. It's a backstory, and it's heartfelt, both of them, I think.
So these nightmare scenarios, what's your greatest fear? What will greet you in hell?
Wow. Well,
mine was I woke up in a trash yard, which will make sense if you see the show. And I turn around, and the devil is there, and he says, "Thank you," which is exactly what Paul doesn't want to do, but through different interactions with other people, doubt is created in his head, and he doesn't know what he believes is right, or he's believing it because of his backstory in his life, and that question and that doubt feeds that, and I could definitely see him having that nightmare.
My nightmare scenario was built much more around with, it's actually built with a fairly similar idea, just with a couple of sharp left turns here and there, where I, woke up in hell in a metal bird cage, which is always constantly too hot. Really weird. And, I don't want to give away key aspects of the story, but there's a specific individual in my life where, I see them, and, I see the torment that they might be going through. and it hammers home for my character how much he should be trying to save people, because nobody, in his mind, as many people as he can save from this, he will.
Right on. We're being joined by Marcus Potter. Mark.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you
Howdy.
doing, man?
Good
Pleasure.
to meet you. Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. These guys are giving me a lot of good stuff. Can
Awesome.
can I get you to join us over here?
Sure.
I can't mic you up like these guys, but I can get my close to you here. So I don't know if you got a pocket square or anything. That's just fine. Thanks for joining us. Absolutely. So. We're lucky. We're glad you made it on the highway. So, you guys, real quick, while I'm thinking about it, introduce yourselves as your persons, and then your characters.
So, like,
Just this is just for radio stuff.
okay.
Say
Hi.
I'm Noah.
Okay.
Blah, blah.
hi, I'm Noah Parker, and I will be playing Pastor Paul.
Hi, I'm Kieran Regan, and I'll be playing Associate Pastor Joshua.
That's great. Now, if I could get your Netflix recommendation and your Spotify recommendation.
Well, I love One Republic. Wanted came out a few days ago.
No
one
way.
of the singles. And Netflix, I really love Disenchantment. I was a big fan of Futurama, and it's kind of that same realm. And season 2, I think, is coming September 20th.
I am a huge fan of Netflix Mindhunter. Oh my goodness, Jonathan Groff is amazing. And on Spotify, I've been on a musical kick recently with A New Brain. Great musical. Again, Jonathan Groff. I just like Jonathan Groff. And then if we're talking non-musical, I've been listening to MGMT. So their first album.
Right on. What about you, Mr. Potter?
Netflix, I would roll with. Goodness, man, what's on Netflix? What is
So true. So true.
I wish I could watch Netflix.
So true.
Not a sponsor. Not a sponsor.
Is Netflix
So
still
true.
a thing?
Yeah.
Spotify? Don't you roll with iTunes?
Yeah.
Is Spotify still in existence?
Yeah. I think Spotify is more popular than
Spotify's
iTunes.
pretty popular. I just use CDs now.
Yeah.
Spotify.
VHS. I put my VHS in my TV
I
or
got my
my
record
my
player in the
car.
bag.
But musical theater nerd through and through. You know, any new musical right now, Moulin Rouge is playing.
So good.
My son Tennessee is in a production of Willy Wonka at the Lawrence Arts Center, so you've got Willy Wonka, you know, going through the iTunes right now. So, you know, there's where our family is at right now with Spotify and iTunes.
Right on. All right. Thanks for joining us here. I've got lots of questions for you, I guess. These guys have really been helping me out. And you're welcome to hang out and listen to all his answers. So, but yeah, Mr. Potter, is it Marcus or is it Mr. Potter? If I keep calling you Mr. Potter,
Marcus is absolutely
okay.
fine.
All right.
Thank you.
I say, if you're Mr. Potter, I've got to be Professor Snape, and that doesn't end well for either of us. So,
Have you ever heard?
you probably get that all the time. I apologize. Okay, so you have been everywhere. I mean, you've done shows San Francisco, Colorado, New York City. You took the Boogeyman to London. What brings you to Kansas, and what is your mission here?
Yeah. You know, New York City has been my home for the last 20 years now, and this opportunity here at the University of Kansas came about, and I had been really blessed in my career to have had some incredible mentors, you know, from Anne Bogart at Columbia to my professor in my undergraduate work, Jim Kirkwood, who, you know, gave their time and energy and were so overwhelmingly generous with what they gave to me that I've been wanting and looking for an opportunity to give some of that back to the younger emerging generation. So when I heard about this position opening up, and I learned that this department values professors that are conducting research and they want us in the field and working, I thought, this could be a really nice combination to travel back and forth to New York, where I, continue to run the New York Rep Theater, and the department here, again, values that work. So they support it, and they want us out there. So the combination of going from New York City back to Lawrence now is fantastic. And now I go back to New York City, I'm like, get me the heck out of here. How did my wife and my 2 kids survive and live here? And the family part is definitely part of the equation. We have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. We were living in a 700 square foot apartment, great apartment, but kids in bunk beds in our living room can only last for so long. So when this position opened up, I thought this is really compelling and really great timing, and I just jumped on it and came here for the campus visit, got to know some of the students and faculty, and was really moved and inspired by who would be my colleagues. And I found that the students are just, they have an eagerness and a willingness to jump into the deep end. So the combination of all those factors just felt like a really nice fit, and it's been a wonderful experience so far.
Fantastic, yeah. That, I guess that you touched a bit on that. My next question, what differences do you see in students that you're training here in Kansas versus students that you would train in New York or San Francisco?
This is the first time where I'm taking a much deeper dive into really making a deeper commitment into teaching. In New York, it was really between gigs, but it was between jobs. It was a class here, a class here, where this is where I'm really making a commitment to undergraduates for 4 years, for our PhD students, that it's really more of a longer term commitment. So building relationships and really getting to know students in a deeper way and having an understanding of what they need and where they're coming from, it's a just greater opportunity to make that richer investment. Whereas in New York, it was really, 4 weeks here, 8 weeks here, and people would come and go. This is an opportunity to really, establish those relationships, which is fantastic.
So this is your second Lucas Nath production, going from Red Speedo with doping now to the church theme. What draws you to Lucas's work, and what do you see from a directing standpoint as a difference between the shows?
Well, Lucas Nath is just such a phenomenal writer. I mean, he's one of the hottest writers of this generation. He's opening plays on Broadway, his plays running all over the country, just an incredibly compelling, evocative writer with such rich language. I mean, the poetry and the texture and the details in his language is just fun to play, fun to listen to, the musicality and the bold themes. So the strain that runs through the veins of much of his work is the vivid language. The themes jump all over the place. Here with the Christians, it's why do you believe what you believe? How do you form the identity of who you are as an individual? By what you believe, and being conscious of what you believe and why is really what's at the heart of the Christians. Going back to Red Speedo, it was another moral, ethical question about how far are we willing to go to win, to succeed, and how far are we willing to compromise or release our moral compass in order to win. So Lucas asks these larger existential questions of the audience, which just leaves us ready and ripe to have a conversation. And it's accessible, and it's vivid, and it's funny, and you're in and engaged from page one. So I'm very excited about where we're headed in this production. We have a phenomenal cast led by Noah and Kieran and Dominique and the other Lucy Kuski, our PhD student, and Riley Fullerton. We have a phenomenal cast. Set looks stunning. We're set in a mega church, as I'm sure you know that we've discussed so far. So we have these massive flats with these glorious stained glass backdrop designed by our MFA student Lexi Jost. So it's an epic yet simple production. At the end of the day, it's a blank canvas with actors speaking into those microphones, having these intellectual, rhetorical arguments and conversations, debating scripture and debating why one believes what they believe. So it's a riveting experience so far to work on his plays.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like you like to choose subject matter in general. That's usually Hot Topic stuff, other shows. Untitled Opioids musical, another one that looked a bit similar to the Christians, Church and State.
Ah, yes.
So what goes into your thought process? Do you just get these shows and you're like, awesome, I'm going to do my best, or are you taking the lead in choosing these pictures for yourself?
You know, I started as an actor and was working in the regional theater for a long time, and I would part of the transition that led me into directing, which then led me into artistic leadership, was having agency over what stories I wanted to be a part of. So when I was an actor, I would get an audition. I wouldn't necessarily resonate with the play, and I would turn it down. My agents were saying, "Hey, you're not working. Do you really want to turn down this piece?" And I felt like I was helpless. I felt like I could only react to whatever audition came my way, and I really wanted to have a say in the types of stories I wanted to tell. So, using, for me, and I think this is for all of us, it goes without saying, but using art to move the needle, to expand our capacity for empathy, to create some type of change. My ability of deciphering and telling stories is my gift as a human being, and I want to use that gift to create change. So it's really picking pieces that I think will resonate with audience, that will open up conversations, that will bring us closer together as people, that will make us kinder and make us enable us to have more compassion. So I do choose and think in great detail about what pieces I do want to work on and what I choose to invest my time in, certainly.
And how does diversity and inclusion and figure into that?
Yeah, at New York Rep, equity, diversity, inclusion is that it runs through every vein of our organization in terms of telling stories from voices that are from marginalized communities, or are talking about stories that increase inclusive country and inclusive culture. So yes, that's at the heart of every piece that I do, is wanting to create a more inclusive world, and that means becoming more equitable. That means more diversity, to enrich our understanding of the world that we live in. So here in the classroom and in my professional work, first and foremost is that sense of creating an inclusive environment, both with the artists that I work with the students in the classroom we create, and with the audiences that we share our stories with, always front and center for me.
As a student in one of these classrooms, the very first piece of paper that Marcus gave us was an article about diversity in theater. I'm as a theater kid now, It's sort of fun that I get to call myself that now, because I wasn't for the first 2 years while I was here at KU. I'd never really thought super heavily about that. I'm privileged with what I have, and to think, like these are problems that other people are facing, with things that they sometimes just can't control. And so to know that that's behind, the works that we do and the things we produce and the stories that we tell, it changes your mind a little bit.
Marcus, tell us a little about this picture.
Ooh, oh wow, oh my goodness. That's Christopher Lloyd, Death of a Salesman. I had the great honor of playing Biff opposite Chris in that production. Wow, that was actually one of the last times I was acting. So that is incredible to see. Wow.
Can you send this to me?
See, that was 2010. So you would have been a young man at that point. What was that production like? I mean, get over the fact that you're playing a character named Biff against Doc.
That's what I was thinking.
Beyond that point, what was that experience like? I saw that your work with Julianne Moore in the Church and State, but to be face to face with Christopher Lloyd, I mean, that's.
Well, I tell you, the first table read of Death of a Salesman, he showed up off book, and got in my face 3 inches from my nose and was staring into my eyes. I'm like, wow, this is gonna be an experience. And I mean, the man's work ethic is off the chart. I mean, he would stay after rehearsal and ask to run lines and ask to go to the bar and then to continue discussing the play. Just a relentless worker. Now, with that said, he also doesn't have the sharpest of memory right now. So he would go up and Chris would look at me and he would kind of like wink and say, "Save me," and we would start improvising Arthur Miller and to get back on track. So every night was a new experience, but there was always this deep sense of truth and no BS to his work, just present and is a force of nature.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. Yeah, I'm very jealous for that experience, especially with him in his age. But did you? And so, other than ethic, I mean, was there any gems of wisdom that he slipped in?
It was just a continual reminder about being honest and being truthful in your work, and it's something that we try to focus on continually as artists and actors, and telling stories is being authentic and being true to your voice. But he took that to a completely new level. There was just this sense of I really understood what it meant to be present on stage and be truthful on stage with no acting in quotes, with no fabricating anything, but just that sense of how present and how locked in to your partner can you really be, and how deeply can you truly listen to another artist that you're working with.
Could you talk a little bit about maybe the bridge that you're building between KU and New York? I'm sure maybe other professors in the theater department are a part of that, but how easy is it going to become for a KU theater student to become an off-Broadway, auditioning off-Broadway?
Well, I've already started that process. So there's been several projects that New York Rep has been involved in that I've already started working with, incorporating students at KU. For example, there was a piece of documentary theater called A Bad Night that New York Rep was developing, and our two playwrights, Amy Whitting and Nicole Pandolfo, gave us the opportunity to do a reading of it here on campus before we developed it at Playwrights Horizons in New York. So we did a reading here, for example, and the assistant director also went on to work on the Off-Broadway production as the assistant director. And we also initiated a fellowship where we've selected for this season 2 students that can track and follow and learn about artistic leadership, and we give them mentorship from myself, from staff, from our board, and also include them in projects. So for example, we had a collaboration this summer with the Kansas Repertory Theater, which is of course the producing summer arm of the department, where professional equity actors are working alongside the students here at KU. And so there's this hybrid where New York Rep brought a piece that we're developing as a production here this summer, and the assistant director, for example, will be going on to the New York production, and the actor who played one of the lead roles here will also go on to be an assistant director in New York. So those are like some direct and tangible ways of kind of building that bridge to the professional world. But there's also small things, trying to include my students on what is happening in the field, what is happening in the American theater, and just giving insight and wisdom into what is happening from my perspective in New York and beyond. And small things like there's a student who has interest in a musical writing team, and I'm feeding them the demos and the early drafts of the play, so a student has a chance to follow it, and get a sense of the new play development process from a perspective where they can just watch a play grow and morph and see and have a window into that process. And then in addition to that, I'm always looking for ways to work with students on a professional level. So when a student graduates and moves to New York, like Noah is moving to New York, anything that I can do or anything New York Rep can do to support Noah, we'll do it. Giving him an audition, making a connection, introducing him to somebody, writing a letter of recommendation for a future fellowship, et cetera, et cetera. Anything and everything we're ready to do, and I'm wanting to do to provide those opportunities.